Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today, we're going to talk about Elizabeth Bathory. Usually, it's just me, but today I have my best sister, Steph, here. Hi, Steph.
Hi, best sister.
Best sister ever.
Not just because I'm the only sister.
Best regardless. Regardless.
Uh-huh.
Even all the honorary
True.
sisters, you're still the best.
Yes.
Elizabeth Bathory, or because I'm going to mess up, her anglicized name, Elizabeth Bathory, which is how English-speaking people might know her as.
Elizabeth Bathory.
So they separated her last name, the syllables, Bat and Hurry was separate. So Bathory, it's not a TH sound. It's like two separate. But yeah, I'm going to say Elizabeth Bathory. I'm going to say Elizabeth Bathory. I'm going to say it right.
Like Uber Americans are Elizabeth Bathory.
Yeah. Uber Americans are like Elizabeth Bathory because they put the TH together.
Sure.
Elizabeth Bathory is how you hear her spoken of in English-speaking regions. But Elizabeth Bathory is kind of a perfect choice for October. She has a reputation for being the most prolific serial killer of the Renaissance, but it's unclear if she was. There are questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Bloody Mary in the Renaissance.
Yes. We are about the same time period.
So she beat her out for like offing people?
According to the rumors.
Murder a lot of people?
Well, here's the thing is Queen Mary I would not be considered a serial killer because she was legally executing people. So it doesn't really count.
Fair.
But you would say, you don't have to agree with the laws because she was killing people for being Protestant, but legally executing them.
That's King Henry's daughter, right?
Yes.
She's Catholic.
Yes. And she died, Queen Mary I died about 2 years before Elizabeth Bathory was born.
Oh.
So they're real close together. Their lives did not overlap, but there's only 2 years separating Mary's death and Elizabeth's birth. Oh, definitely.
Right.
We are going to put on our best Dateline caps and figure out. This is like true crime circa 16th century. We're going to figure out who we think did it. Okay. Elizabeth Bathory was born on the 7th of August, 1560. To put that in perspective of our other episodes for my regular listeners, Queen Elizabeth I was on the throne. She was young. She was the new 27-year-old Queen of England after the death of her sister, Queen Mary I. And up in Scotland, Mary, Queen of Scots, was the queen, but she was in France, married to their king, so she was also the Queen of France, and she was about to become a widow and lose all of her thrones. So we're right before that happens. That kind of inserts Elizabeth Bathory into the timeline. Elizabeth was a Hungarian noble girl. She was born in Transylvania. We're very on theme. Which at the time was part of Royal Hungary. When Hungary had a king, Royal Hungary included Transylvania. So she was Hungarian. And during her childhood, she suffered from falling sickness. And today, you would call it epilepsy. But back then, they called it falling sickness. And
my husband has falling sickness.
Yes, he does. He does. He has modern falling sickness. And she suffered numerous seizures. And there was a treatment for falling sickness in the Renaissance. The treatment for old-timey epilepsy was to rub blood on the lips of the affected person.
In my work, we haven't tried it yet.
Well, they tried it back then, and word on the street was they were like, yes, this is the move. But they didn't keep doing it, so it might not have been the move. Elizabeth was reportedly very intelligent. She was fluent in at least 4 languages. She was smarter than the average person, men and women included. People noticed that she was extremely smart, like abnormally smart. Which also, I can't decide. Does that make her more likely to be a serial killer, less likely? I'm not sure.
More.
Maybe more. I feel like more.
I think serial killers tend to have a higher intelligence.
Yeah, well, she was smart. So that's a strike against her, maybe. In 1573, at the age of 13, Elizabeth was betrothed. And word on the street was that she had become pregnant and had a baby. And they needed to get her married off so that the fact that she wasn't a virgin wouldn't be a red flag.
But she was pregnant when she got married, or she had already given birth?
The rumor, because there's no proof of anything,
Oh.
is that she had been sent away, she had given birth, she had come back, and they were like, we got to get her married now.
Oh, but there's no kid around.
Nope. No kid.
Oh. I mean, I believe it.
And we don't know if it's true or if it's just a really persistent rumor, but we are talking about it 500 years, well, 450 years later. So it was a pretty strong rumor that lasted a long time.
I mean, that could have made anyone snap.
Yep. And this isn't the only thing. There's a lot of word on the street and circumstantial evidence where you're just
I'm
like,
so
well,
excited.
there's a lot of stuff here. So there's two different versions of this rumor. One was that she was raped and got pregnant
Ooh.
and got sent away.
Yeah.
Something happened to her baby. She came back, no baby. But the other one was that she fell in love with a servant boy who was around her age. And she got
both are
pregnant.
likely.
It could have been either. Either of them,
Yeah.
or neither of them could have been true. But either way, it could have been, I mean, it would have been traumatizing either way. Like, either way, a baby never materialized. And the pregnancy would have ended in stillbirth, miscarriage, or her baby just being spirited away and she never sees this baby again.
Yeah.
This also could just be an explanation to the woman she became. Like, if people, after the fact, were like, well, look at all the stuff that we think she did. This must have happened to her. So it could be like retelling after the fact, because we just don't have any evidence. It's really just rumor. And that's it.
I mean, she could have just gotten raped and then had to be swept away for, like, get her head back on straight.
Yeah, it could be
And it was like,
any number of things
clearly
on the
she
spectrum.
had a baby if she ran away. Yeah.
Right. It could have been anything. But she does seem to have been missing for a period of time, but also that could also just be rumor. It may just be
Could it
part
be
of the mythos that makes up Elizabeth Bathory.
A 10-month period of time.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they have dates. I don't think they know exactly.
No.
It was just like, I remember she was gone for a while. Like, it's super hearsay and vague, and like, I heard from a friend that this happened. So it's really just opinion. What do you think?
What do you think?
I go back and forth. I kind of want to say there's a lot of red flags. So where there's smoke, there's
Okay.
fire. But
I think probably rape and baby.
beyond benefit of the doubt, I'm not sure. But altogether, it looks real bad.
Okay.
So this was also a time when torture and cruel punishments were the norm. Torture was seen as an accurate way to get information. It was encouraged as a foolproof way to get the truth. It was a truth serum. You torture them, they will tell you the truth. Violence was pretty desensitized. They would do violent punishment. You would be hung, drawn, and quartered in public, and that would involve limbs being ripped off.
Yeah.
And disembowelment and stuff. That was normal public punishment. So
Gross.
that's another thing we have to keep in mind, is that being extremely violent was seen as kind of normal for men. It was seen as normal for
Right.
men.
It's kind of traumatizing for a little girl.
Right. The violence was part of the entertainment, even for children. And this could explain why things like torture didn't seem to bother Elizabeth. She wasn't like, oh, gross. She was like, oh, that's interesting.
How did they not have more serial killers?
Right. Exactly. It's not enough on its own to turn someone into a serial killer, because it was the norm in Renaissance and had been for the whole Middle Ages. So everyone would be a serial killer. If just that was enough to turn someone into a murderer, everyone would just be running around. It'd be the purge every day. And that didn't happen, but it could have contributed. If you think various factors in her genetics combined with some super complex PTSD, that's enough to tip you over the edge, maybe, if you're predisposed to not dealing with it well.
Royalty, so inbreeding was probably a thing.
On the 8th of May, 1575, Elizabeth Bathory was married just before she turned 15. So that whole baby thing might have happened when she was 13. She's 14. She's getting married. And Elizabeth herself was an heiress. She was wealthy. And her new husband was also from a wealthy Hungarian family. Together, combined, they had more money than the King of Hungary. So they were like super rich.
Loaded.
And over the first decade of the marriage, they didn't have any children. Her husband was often away at war. War was totally his thing. And she was left back in Hungary, so she was alone a lot of the time. I mean, he'd come back, but they weren't together all the time. And she was still pretty young. So, I mean, who's going to blame him for not wanting to impregnate the 14-year-old, right? Like, valid.
No, but back then, if you had a kid really young, it was harder to get pregnant because,
That's true.
right?
That's true, but she
So,
does eventually
I'm
have
smart
children.
baby.
Yeah. Her surviving letters show that she's very logical and matter-of-fact, no time for flowery language, straight to the point, which was not the way of the time. Like, back then, it was all like, my heart beats for you kind of vibe, and she wasn't like that. She was just like, hey, so this is what happened at the castle, and this is what you need to know, and it was just very straightforward. So then there were more rumors. Word on the street was that when her husband was home, he would teach his wife tricks of the trade, so torture.
Oh.
And there are a couple of reasons that this could have been. Erzsébet was often left home alone running things, and this was seen as the most accurate truth serum for servants. And they had a lot of servants, and like, this is how you get the truth about if someone stole something, you torture them. And torture wasn't seen as feminine behavior necessarily, but when he wasn't there, it was seen as an effective leadership skill, which wouldn't be necessarily something women should be trained in. But running the household, which would include managing all the staff, would be. So maybe he was just like, look, I can't be here all the time, and this is how you torture. And he would have known how to torture because he was one of those, like, crusade guys who was always off at war. So torture was something he would have been able to teach her about, for sure. 10 years into the marriage, at the age of 25, Erzsébet gave birth to her first acknowledged child, a daughter.
Oh.
So she's 25, potentially she has a 12-year-old out there somewhere, but then she has a daughter. And while we don't know how many children she had or their ages or even all of their names, she did have several children with her husband starting around 25. So for that, I'm happy. That's like a nice, reasonable age to start having babies.
Yeah.
So that's
But
kind
he
of
just wasn't around.
like a green flag, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem overly traumatic, although with her complex PTSD, it easily could have piled on. I'm having
How
a
old
baby.
was he when they got married?
She was born in 1460. He was born in 1455, so he was 5 years older than her. So she was 14, he was 19. And he was like off at war. Yeah. So Elizabeth was reportedly an unkind mistress. She would get her staff from surrounding towns. She effectively owned 17 towns because it was her area and peasants were seen more like property. You'd get in more trouble for killing someone's cow than for killing someone's servant. They were like less than livestock as far as valuable assets.
I think they'd be more valuable, but
You would think. But they were easily replaceable. Peasants had a lot of kids and you could just find more, right? So
that's true.
And she would go into these towns, not she, but her people would go into these towns with promises of work. But there were stories that she also had a squad of men to kidnap local peasants to either work for her or potentially torture and kill them. We're not sure. But word on the street was she wasn't just like, hey, come work at my castle. She was like, you had to be careful that her staff didn't just come kidnap you and then you went missing.
It's like a medieval coyote.
Yeah. Again, we only have very little circumstantial evidence. It's almost all rumors. So it's more like an urban legend. But there would be nothing the peasants could do to stop. Even if it was true, it wasn't illegal. You were allowed to go kidnap peasants and be like, you work for me now. That was allowed. So what are you going to do? The person you complained to would be her. She was in charge. And it was also...
like, I see no problem with that.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, no, that's legit. That's valid. That's like, fine. We're allowed to do it. Yep.
No, you lose. Bye.
It was also noticed that Erzsébet had more than the normal amount of servants dying. It's like the average, what would be seen as like an average, like regular amount of servants dying. Hers was a little higher. So one day, a priest was called to her home after the death of one of her servants. And normally the priest would see the corpse before it was put into the coffin. But this time, the priest arrived and the corpse was already inside the sealed coffin.
because it was tortured and probably cut up into pieces.
He wasn't going to see it. It was sealed. And he questioned because this was so weird that he did like, why is the body already in the coffin? And Elizabeth reportedly leaned in and whispered that they seemed to have a case of cholera, and she didn't want to make a big fuss about it. She didn't want to worry the people.
Red flag.
Red flag for sure. And he was like, okay, that's weird, but I get it. Like, who wants to, like, open it up and see the cholera person, right? Like, he wasn't trying... She's still the boss of him, too. Like, he's not trying to piss her off because she's the boss's wife. Yeah. She's in charge. On another occasion, a coffin arrived at a church from Elizabeth that was larger than the normal-size coffin. And the priest heard that there may be up to 3 bodies inside this coffin.
Red flag. Red flag.
Yeah, that's a giant coffin.
When
just shows up.
You're killing them in triplicate.
Yep. The priest went to Elizabeth to ask questions, and Elizabeth said, no, of course there are not 3 bodies inside that coffin. That would be weird. But yes, there are 2. So...
Maybe it was a couple that they were married and wanted to be died together.
I think she's just like, there are 2.
Discussion?
What?
You go out to like the little local like woodsman and you're like, hey, I know you have been getting a bulk deal on these coffins. How about a big one?
I can just put a few people in.
She's not making the coffin. She had to literally talk to somebody and be like, can you make me an extra large?
Yep.
Because I got a little crazy,
large servant.
And now there's 2.
Work smarter, not harder. When a few servants die at once, just use your extra large coffins. Because they also weren't seen as people. I mean, this would be like if, I don't know, I mean, it's not even like when people like bury their pets in the backyard. Like, it's less respect than that for these servants.
When we had the raccoon go through our chickens, we had like 2 or 3 dead chickens a day for several days.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets to be like that, right? But
it'd be even lower than that. Like, the chickens would need more respect than these servants.
Crazy to me.
Yeah.
Red flag.
And so the priest thought this was super weird, but he was like, okay, weird, but this lady is just a rich, eccentric woman. She is strange. She's a weirdo, but rich people can be weirdos sometimes, and it's just like, oh, they're not in touch with, maybe you don't just shove 3 servants into a coffin, you know? It's not a good look.
She didn't. That would be insane. She only did 2.
Right? It was reported that Elizabeth was prone to fits of rage. That's what they said.
Red flag.
Yeah. For minor offenses by her staff, she would fly into violent rages and, like, beat them up. Like,
I mean, I feel like that's a serial killer trait.
Yeah, it's not...
Like, I stabbed him in the face because he took my gum.
Yeah. And it's not quite that bad, but it's pretty bad. One story says that one of her ladies accidentally pulled her hair while brushing it for her, and she punched her right in the nose.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like, brush hair better. And this caused her to bleed. She got a bloody nose. And again, this is kind
her nose.
Yeah. This is kind of an urban legend, but as the story goes, she bled a lot, and some of it got onto Elizabeth's skin. And she noticed that the blood made her skin look and feel younger.
Red flag. Red flag.
Yep, but we don't know if it's true.
Blood on your skin.
Yep, but also blood facials are a thing. Now, they use your own blood, but
so gross.
She didn't know about blood diseases or anything, so she would have been like, oh, this is even better than my own blood. Someone else's blood.
Rub all that dirty peasant blood all over my body.
Yeah, and she was, remember, she did have that blood rubbed all over her lips for her epilepsy, so she probably thought she was helping that too.
Hey, do you have your own blood rubbed on your lips or somebody else's blood?
It wasn't specified.
How did you not die of, like, AIDS?
I mean, bleeding people was a thing, so easily it could have been your own blood, but yeah, they didn't know about blood-borne illness. So in 1585, Elizabeth's husband died. And this meant that Elizabeth stopped moving from castle to castle. When her husband had been alive, they would go on progress. They'd go to various castles. They'd see all of their little 17 towns. But they stopped. When he died, she was just like, I want to stay home, which I feel like is relatable.
Yeah.
If I was just on my own, I'd be like, yeah, I like this castle the best. I'm going to stay here.
Slum it in one castle.
Yeah. This meant that the rumors surrounding her started to amplify because the villages she was procuring the staff from were more isolated. It was 1 or 2 villages near the castle that she was now using all the time, as opposed to her 17 villages that she'd been getting people from before. The problem was she always needed more staff because her staff died more often than usual for reasons that we don't know for sure.
From the same town. Mm-hmm. Like, why will serial killers not learn? You gotta disperse.
Yeah, serial kill around. But, this was kind of a new thing. They couldn't just watch Dateline and, like, be like, oh, that's what they did wrong.
Oh, peasants are dying.
And she's also not breaking the law still. Remember, she hasn't broken the law yet. You can kill peasants if you're allowed to. You can just go into a town and just mow them all down if you want. And that is not illegal.
Insane.
Yeah, and the rumors got so bad that townspeople started hiding their daughters from the Countess's people.
Oh.
Because she only wanted young single women working for her, preferably virgins, is the rumor.
Red flag. Red flag.
Yep. Hide the virgins because the Countess might kidnap them and you may never see them again. But again, it's just rumors because it's not even illegal. Nobody's bringing charges against her. There's no paperwork that says any of this. It's just word on the street. And word on the street was that weird things were happening at the castle of the Countess. Some of Elizabeth's victims were reportedly, this is just again rumors, but the rumors went that she would cover her victims in honey and leave them outside to be devoured by insects. Other stories report that during colder times in the year, they were forced to lay naked in the snow and have cold water poured over them till they were frozen to the ground, and then they were left to freeze to death.
That one I believe more. The honey one is...
Elizabeth also reportedly liked to stick various objects under people's fingernails or cut off their lips or noses. Now we're talking servants who've, maybe they stole, so cut off the tip of their nose and be like, did you steal? I might cut off more. This is seen as valid. I love
watching serial killer shows and movies. I literally have to fast forward anytime they put anything under fingernails. I just can't.
No, it just...
Like, I can watch them, like, everything, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Eat my lunch. I'm cool. The second they stick things under fingernails, I'm like, oh!
Well, Elizabeth was like, this is how you do it. This is how you get the truth from people. And she may have learned it from her husband. Killer. Urban legends surfaced that she enjoyed bathing in the blood of virgins. And this seems far-fetched. Given the number of servant girls you'd have to kill to get a bath of blood, like a whole tub of blood, and the fact that they don't have anticoagulants, the logistics just don't seem to work out. But that doesn't mean...
have to kill them and bleed them out.
Like all relatively quickly. Blood. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she did like to put blood on her skin and her face. That part seems true. So I kind of feel like it's an exaggeration of something that might have been actually happening, but not a whole tub of blood.
I mean, she put blood everywhere, but it wasn't a tub.
Right.
But it would also explain the 2 bodies at once in the coffin.
It would.
Is making blood.
Or potentially 3, because they never opened the coffin to look. She's just like, no, there's not 3. It's just 2. Which means it probably at least 2, but how do we know there wasn't 5? And she was like, oh, don't be silly. It's 2. Don't open it up.
I mean, that's like a kind of exaggeration. My children would tell me, no, I didn't eat 8 pieces of candy. I only ate 2.
Right?
I'm like,
Yeah. But it could have been 3, 4, 5. You don't know.
If she lied about that,
it
had to have been a little socially inappropriate.
Yeah, no, this was
once,
definitely all of the rumors were seen as like, this isn't good. It wasn't technically illegal, but people were like, yikes. That's
right.
She creeped people out. She was the creepy countess on the hill.
I mean, she kind of creeps me out.
Yeah.
Like the original, kids who they'll always be like that one house that's like abandoned. We had one at the end of our road.
Yep.
And you're like, the guy lives there and he eats children. She was like the original one of those.
Yep. My kids, when they were little, they started talking about this haunted house that they would see all the time. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it was just some abandoned house that we drove by occasionally. And they were sure it was haunted.
No, it's a thing.
Yep.
It was the haunted lady.
Yep. And she's the creepy lady on the hill, the creepy rich lady. Like, don't go on her lawn.
On her lawn or she'll bleed you out with her
Mm-hmm.
tub.
You'll never be seen again. She takes baths in blood of virgins, so at least make sure you have a lot of sex before you go to her house.
That's what I'm thinking. Instead of hiding your daughters, just be like, go have sex, and then she won't want you.
But also, neither would anyone else. They're not trying to ruin their daughters. This
They'd
is
be
the
alive
16th
though.
century. They would be. Stories of the time say she didn't shy away from gore. So that would have been a reason to keep her actions secret. She may have just been a mean lady who just beat up her servants, and sometimes they died.
She might have just enjoyed a little torture, but didn't actually mean to kill them.
Mm-hmm. But then didn't want to be like, oh, by the way, I'm the one who kills all the people.
I think that's soft serial killing.
Yeah,
she could have kill him. I just want to torture him.
Yeah, she could have just been a basic bitch, cruel mistress. The bad guy in a film, just like the evil lady on the hill.
She kind of creeps me out.
Yeah.
Like the original, kids who they always be like that one house that's like abandoned. Mm-hmm. We had one at the end of our road.
Yep.
And you're like, the guy lives there and he eats children. She was like the original one of those.
Yep.
It's a thing.
Yep.
It was the haunted lady.
Yep. And she's the creepy lady on the hill, the creepy rich lady. Like, don't go on her lawn.
On her lawn or she'll bleed you out.
Mm-hmm. You'll never be seen again. She takes baths in blood of virgins, so at least make sure you have a lot of sex before you go to her house.
That's what I'm thinking. Instead of hiding your daughters, just be like, go have sex, and then she won't want you.
But also, neither would anyone else. They're not trying to ruin their daughters. This is the 16th century. They would be. Stories of the time say she didn't shy away from gore. So that would have been a reason to keep her actions secret. She may have just been a mean lady who just beat up her servants, and sometimes they died. She
might have just enjoyed a little torture, but didn't actually mean to kill them.
Mm-hmm. But then didn't want to be like, oh, by the way, I'm the one who kills all the people.
I think that's soft serial killing.
Yeah, she could have
kill him. I just want to torture him.
Yeah, she could have just been a basic bitch, cruel mistress. The bad guy in a film, just like the evil lady on the hill. More recent thoughts of Elizabeth have suggested that she was performing her own grotesque medical school. She was just extremely interested in science and fully desensitized and didn't see peasants as people. So she could have just been doing experiments. She could just be like, she reportedly wasn't a flowery speaker. She wasn't seen as overly maternal. She was very logical, very smart.
Probably just a sociopath.
She could have been that too. Like, right? it could have been a mixture of any number of things.
Yeah.
Will be remembered.
Thanks for listening.
Hi guys, you've reached the end of part 1, and there's more where that came from. Part 2 is over on Patreon, so join us over there for all of the bonus fun.